Welcome back to Signal Solutions TV. I'm here again with my esteemed colleague Adam Butler.
Hello, nice to see you.
Today we're going to be running through some deep discussion about why mobile signal in retail is really important.
Yes, of
How
course.
exciting.
Yeah, well, it's a big area where we're generating lots of inquiries and interest.
It is.
We get asked similar questions regularly from the people that we're talking to. So we thought in our long planning session ahead of this, which I'm sure will come across in the content we create
definitely.
today, that it'd be useful to talk through that. So, in terms of retail, what kind of retailers are we talking about? I mean, obviously, I know, but for the benefit of our...
Yeah, you really should know the answer to this.
Yes,
but,
for the benefit of our listeners and viewers.
Well, we're talking about big retail, so we're talking about multi-site retailers,
Yes.
the likes of Sainsbury's, for example, so supermarkets. But you've also got places like Next, for example. They've got hundreds of sites across the country, and the biggest thing is not the amount of sites they've got, but it's also it's essentially the amount of customers that they've got going into those sites,
Yes.
and what they need to do from a business point of view to service those customers. But also how they need to make sure that their customers can communicate whilst they're in the store. I mean, we all experience problems when we go to supermarkets where you
Yes.
can't make a phone call, that sort of thing. So I think today it'd be really good for us to sort of cover off some of those issues and sort of highlight them to people, maybe to the retailers, but also to make people understand what the problems people face in supermarkets and retail stores.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, before going into even some of the reasons why we've had conversations with some of those big retailers, and we want to have lots more, of course.
Yeah.
But just from a user experience, I'm sure, anyone watching or listening, you or I have discussed it in the past. There's nothing worse than going to do your either big supermarket shop or
the big shop.
The big shop, yeah.
Exactly.
Or the shop on the way back from work.
Yeah.
And you've already said to your cherished other, I'll be popping in here on the way back. Do you need anything? And the answer always comes back, pick this, that, and the other up. Yeah. Or, no, I don't need anything. So you then go in, with the greatest respect to the big retailers. No one wants to be in there longer than they need to be, really.
It's true.
Yeah. So you're straight in to get the stuff that you want. You haven't had any requests to get anything extra. You leave the store. You haven't even noticed that you've got no signal while you're in there because you're darting around. As soon as you leave the store, you get a volley of text messages saying, can you pick up a loaf of bread and a pint of milk, and the kids need some new trainer socks for school tomorrow.
And the last thing you want to do is go back into that supermarket.
Exactly.
And in the nicest possible way.
Yeah.
Especially once you've been in there, done the shop, gone to the checkout, gone through the checkout, got back to your car. Especially if you've got a nice bottle of wine or a couple of beers in your bag. You just want to get home.
Exactly.
And enjoy your evening.
Yeah. And I think the world is split into two groups of people. I'm not going to speculate on what the makeup of those two groups might be, but
I think the viewers might know.
But you've got the people that, when they get the message saying, could you just get this as well, go, oh yeah, no problem, I'll nip back in and get it. And you've got the other 50% of the population that go, there is no way I'm setting foot back in that store now that my mission is complete. And they get back in the car, drive home, and you have to do without the milk and the trainer socks for school tomorrow.
Yeah.
So from a practical perspective, I think everyone appreciates the frustration. But from a retailer's perspective, there are some other missed opportunities when there's no mobile signal in store. So what might one of those be?
Well, 100%. I think if we start with the retailer, you touched on one thing that we both mentioned it there, that you don't want to spend more time in the store. Well, the retailer does want you to spend more time in the store.
Exactly.
They really want you to, they call it dwell time in the store. They want you to be in there for as long as possible, because the longer you're in there, the more stuff you're putting in your basket, basically, and the more buying decisions you're going to make while you're in there. So, me and you might be running around there trying to get out there as quickly as possible. But if the missus does ring you and gets hold of you and says, can you grab some milk?
Yeah.
You've then got to walk back to the milk aisle. The chances are you're going to walk past the crisp aisle.
Yeah.
You might chuck a couple of packets of crisps in there. Suddenly, it doesn't sound like a lot, but you've gone from spending £10 to spending £15 in that store.
Yes.
That's a 50% increase on
Of course.
what you've spent. So if you look at it from the retailer's point of view, the more time you can get your customer in store, keep the customer in store, the more money they're going to spend. And ultimately, you do that over thousands and thousands of customers a week, a month, a year, whatever it may be. You're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, if not millions of pounds.
Millions. We did the numbers. We were chatting with one of our very trusted colleagues recently, but we started looking at those numbers, and in a single store, it turned, a single large store, of which most edge of town supermarkets are large stores, it turned into millions of pounds just from a couple of percentage increases, and that's just on spend.
Yeah.
That's before you start talking about any of the other benefits of having Signal in store, like health and safety or customer loyalty app. But you're right. I think the number one thing is dwell time, getting people to spend more time and more money in store.
And if I'm honest, like me and John, my business partner, when we first started Signal Solutions, we had this conversation, and I said, I don't think the retailers either know that this is a big issue, that customers are not being able to make phone calls when they're in a store because they've got no signal, which ultimately leads them to spending less money in store because they're not taking that phone call, or they can't ring their other half to ask if they need anything else while they're in store. So the retailer's then losing money because you can't find out what you need to buy.
Yes.
But I've always been convinced that the retailers either don't know that is a problem, or they don't know that there's a solution to fix that.
Exactly. And the solution, which actually in other episodes that I know we're keen to put together, we'll be talking more about, but in very simple terms, the solution is very achievable for a store of any size, isn't it?
Exactly.
Just talk to us very briefly about that.
Well, I mean, it is our business. We put mobile signal into buildings.
Yes.
So supermarkets are no different to an office or a hotel. And they essentially need a signal boosting solution, because what you'll find is if you walk to the door of that supermarket or walk out the door of that supermarket, as soon as you get near the door, you're going to start getting better signal.
Yes.
Because the signal outside the supermarket is 99.9% of the time absolutely fine.
Yes.
And we find that with offices and hotels and any other buildings that we work in. Most of the time the signal's fine outside, it's the building itself that's causing the problem.
It is, and I think with those, the typical build of a large retail outlet like that, or these edge of town shopping parks, they are typically metal boxes, aren't they?
Exactly.
And a metal box, the Faraday cage,
Say,
one of our favourites from GCSE physics. The Faraday cage is the biggest challenge to mobile signal penetrating into a building. The metal around the outside, glass, or all the kind of things that reflect the signal back so it can't penetrate in. But actually, what we do to solve that problem, just for any retailer listening or anyone that wants to know more about it, very simply, we put an antenna outside the building. We cable that into the building to the network unit, which is the booster box. And then from there, I mean, it's a little bit more complex than this, but we cable it out to small nodes that sit on in the roof space or in the ceiling area, which distributes signal out, which means that your customers and your colleagues have all got signal just as good as if they were outside the building in the fresh air.
And it is fairly straightforward. I mean, one of the biggest issues we get in lots of buildings is if you take say a hotel, if it was a hotel from 50, 60, 100 years ago, it's likely to have lots of big, thick walls in there. And to run cables around there to put the signal into every room in that building is quite difficult. But you've also got to make sure you put lots of antennas in to cover each room within that hotel, for example. In a supermarket, if you look up above the shelves in a supermarket, it's generally completely open.
Yes.
So actually, you don't need as many antennas dotted around to actually provide really good signal into a supermarket. So, if a retailer is thinking, well, we don't want loads of disruption, putting a whole new system in here, we've already got Wi-Fi, which we'll come on to in a minute. We don't want to put another system in here. It's not actually that difficult to install into a supermarket.
No.
I say that because I'm not the one out there actually doing it.
That's right. But for our engineering experts,
Yeah.
it's not that difficult to
Exactly.
install in a supermarket. But you mentioned Wi-Fi, and that's an interesting one because one of the first pieces of resistance that we tend to come across is, I don't need it. We've got a great Wi-Fi system installed.
Yeah.
Why is Wi-Fi for a user, for a customer, not the perfect answer for phone calling or data? Why is that?
Well, if you walked into a supermarket tomorrow and you pick up you get your phone out to ring your other half to say, do we need any more milk? If you haven't got any signal on there, the next thing you're not thinking, oh, I'm going to see if there's a Wi-Fi network in here.
No.
That's not your number one thought. You're just thinking, oh, that's annoying. Put your phone back in your pocket and you carry on. Even if you think, is there a Wi-Fi network in here? If it's, let's say you're in one of the big supermarkets, I guarantee if you go to log on to their Wi-Fi network, it's not a 10-second job because they want to capture your email address. They want to ask you if you want to sign up to every single bit of marketing they want to do. And that's great from the retailer's point of view because they're capturing your information, but they're already causing you a friction to do something in the store. And not many people are going to do that. Not many people would sign up to a Wi-Fi network. There's many reasons people don't sign up to a public Wi-Fi network anyway.
Yes.
A lot of corporate companies will block people from signing up to public Wi-Fi networks because they're not safe and secure. A lot of people just don't want to go through the hassle like we talked about. They don't want to fill all their details out to get onto that network.
Of course.
And also, if it's a public Wi-Fi network, the chances are it's still connected into an internet connection that's being used by the retail store. The likelihood is it's not actually going to be that great anyway.
No. I mean, I've come down on the train today and I've used the Wi-Fi on the train. I know it's a very different situation. It's transport, but I had to join the Wi-Fi only because the mobile signal on board wasn't sufficient.
Yeah.
I won't name the train operator, but the Wi-Fi was appalling.
Yeah.
It dropped out every 5 minutes. It wanted my personal details to allow me to log on. Now, in that environment, because I was on board for a couple of hours, I had no real choice other than to do it because I had some work to do. If I'd been going into a store and, wanting to do some shopping, there's no way I'd log in, especially if I had 4 5G available, because everyone, I think these days, my feeling about the subject is, you're paying for your data subscription. It works really, really well. There's nothing really better than 4 or 5G in terms of the speed and the security of it. And that's just what people want to use. So it seems to me like a no-brainer for the, without going into the details of the cost versus the exact return, we can share all that and we've got lots of data to support it with anyone that's interested.
Yeah.
But for a relatively low capital expense or 5 or 10 year lease cost, you can get a huge return back in each individual store, and you amplify that out across a network of stores. It's a no-brainer, really. It starts turning into a no-brainer.
Yeah, and what you're doing with any retailer, they don't want their customers to experience friction at all. So they want their customers to walk in, be able to shop freely, have a good experience, and immediately, if they've got poor mobile signal, they've got a potential blocker there for for whatever reason it might be. We've covered a lot of them today, but the customer is walking out of that store with a bit of a negative mindset that actually, when I went into the other supermarket down the road, that might be a little local.
Well, you go there
and you've got perfect signal, and you can, but it might be a little bit more expensive, but you can get everything you need, and you can ring your other half to check. So they're then potentially losing a customer because of that friction. And that is a real key thing for retailers, that they want to make sure that their customers return over and over again.
Of course.
And I think we're all very loyal people.
Yes.
If you've got a local supermarket, one of the main reasons you go there is because it's local.
Yeah.
But the other reason is because that's where you've been going. That's your supermarket. So losing that customer isn't just losing that 15, 50, 100, 200 pounds, whatever you spend in a supermarket every time you go there.
Yes.
It's losing that over 10 years potentially.
Yes.
You
you don't want to risk your customer going somewhere else and potentially finding it easier and maybe better there. No. Customers tend to stick to the brand that they know and are loyal to. I mean, look, the big retailers, as and when we speak to them, have got all this data much better than we would ever have it. They're experts and specialists in it. They'll know the downside of losing a customer to a store, versus keeping one.
Well, I'm going to blow your mind with some maths here.
Oh, I love this. Yes.
Think about this. This is impressive. If you're a customer and you spend £100 a week on shopping,
yeah,
and you go there 52 times a year, I've just done this in my head. It's going to blow your mind. That's £5,200 a year.
Wow. I mean, that is quick maths.
Thank you.
Are you sure it's correct?
I'm hoping so. We'll have to get a calculator out afterwards just double check.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. But then you add 10-15% onto that from extra purchases.
Yeah.
So you lose the customer, you lose that money.
Yeah.
And it'll be more than £100 a week, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
But you add 10-15% on for the upside of what they might get.
Yeah.
That is good maths.
Yeah, you don't have to lose many customers for it to start becoming a problem. But actually, what you want to do is gain customers. This is a flip side of the whole argument. If we're all we've actually done our own research on this. Most people that we speak to say that they've got poor mobile signal in their local supermarket by quite a big way. It's way more than 50-50. It's something like 80-20 people that will say they've got poor mobile signal versus I think I've got good mobile signal when they're in a supermarket. What if you improve the mobile signal in your supermarket and you gain all the customers from another supermarket? Now, that won't happen by just going, we've got mobile signal and putting a marketing campaign out there. But it might happen, or will happen subconsciously, where people go, oh, but in that supermarket, I don't have any friction and it's working really well.
Yes.
They've suddenly gained customers that are spending more than £5,000.
Yes, of course. And there's we don't like to dwell on the negative, but there's lots of other things, like if there were an emergency in store, someone needed someone quickly, their phone wasn't working, they couldn't ring or send a message. I know you think a supermarket's always busy. There's plenty of times you've been into supermarkets off peak hours. Yeah. You could be at the back corner of a supermarket, it's very quiet. Yeah. That's fine if you're on your own and perfectly healthy. If you have an incident, a colleague or a customer... Well,
the colleague thing's a really important thing, because you've got the front of house of a supermarket.
Yes.
Out the back, it's a very different experience. I worked in a supermarket many, many years ago.
Yes.
And you've got chillers, freezer sections, all those sorts of things. You don't want to get stuck in there for too long before you start having a bit of a problem.
No.
And if you've got a mobile phone in your pocket that you can't use, you can't actually raise an alarm at all. You
could probably play Angry Birds on it.
Maybe.
But you wouldn't be able to make a phone call out to save your life.
What did you do just before you passed away?
Completed level 70.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe we should not make light of it. Look, I think we've had a good chat. Go on.
This is the worst time to make light of a very serious situation.
No.
But ultimately, I mean, we've covered off quite a few points there from the retailer side of things. And the health and safety thing, although we made a little bit of light of it, is a big thing.
It is. It's very important. I think wrapping up this section to allow people time to digest it, and I think always important, let people know how they can get in touch with us. So if this has resonated with anyone, and it doesn't have to be supermarkets, could be small independent shops, small chains of shops, retailers like clothing or fashion or jewelers, anything. How do they get in touch with us, Mark? What's the next step for them?
Best thing to do is go to our website. It's signalsolutions.co.uk. Or you can send us an email at info@signalsolutions.co.uk. The best thing on the website is there's a form on there you can fill out and request one of us to get in contact with you. You can request what we call a desktop survey, and we can basically provide you a ballpark figure of what it would cost for your particular store or property that you're building that you've got.
Yeah.
But get in touch with us.
Yeah.
There may be people that work in retail, know people that work in retail, have experience of walking into a retail shop where there's poor signal. There is a solution out there that we are very, very confident would give a very good return on investment if you improve the mobile signal in a store that doesn't have good mobile signal currently.
Yes, exactly. Perfect. Cool. Well, look, that sort of wraps up retail for now. I'm sure we'll be back with more content on that subject soon. You started, so I'll finish.
Okay. Is that how we do it now?
Yeah, that's how we're doing it from now on. I've just decided. So no, but look, it's been really good chatting it through. We've got plenty more stuff that we want to talk about over the coming weeks. If you do need anything, just once again, it's info@signalsolutions.co.uk, and Mark and I will be back soon with more content on Signal Solutions TV.